We are live, good people. We are live. We are alive. What's happening? What is going on out there in the world? Oh, somebody touched my echo thingy. There we go. That should be back to normal. Sorry about that. Hello and welcome. Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to Channels. It is an honor to serve you today. My name is Soul Expression. You can call me Soul. What up? What's happening? Um, I hope everything is well with you. Now, today we have some reaction. We have some discussion. Okay, we have some reaction, which will be raw off the top of the head, and we have some script that you know we're going to get into. I've been wanting to talk about some of this stuff for a while now, but first, I had to get into the habit of talking about the inner storyteller into the camera as much as possible, right? When I get to episode 3000, I will look up, I will come up for air. Um, I want to see, yeah, maybe if I put it like that, a little slanted, put it a little slanted. I just want to make sure that y'all can hear me good, hear me well before we get started. Okay. If you are here, good people, if you are indeed here, you are in for some real conversations about natural law, about religion, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the great. We talk about money, we talk about anarchy, right? We talk about culture and how mankind is manipulated by forces that don't have our best interests at heart, perhaps because they're completely evil. We are not bashing faith systems here, though. We do not call people names for having a religion, although I don't subscribe to one myself. We are simply examining the psychological affects and effects of the stories that we have the most faith in and how those stories help shape society. And now that examination has to sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery, good people. And it would behoove us to frequently return to the question, what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works? And now, before I get started, if any of that makes you uneasy for any reason, makes you a little angry, makes you frustrated or annoyed, uncomfortable, if you will, just know that although you are encouraged to stay, maybe confront some of those feelings, you are welcome to leave at any time. Okay? After you like the video. You are not welcome to leave until you like the video. That's just, it's in the Bible. Look it up, in Book of Soul, chapter 3, verse 3, sentence number 3. It says it right there. You got to like the video before you can go watch another one or click the exit button. Anyway, we have some good show stuff to get into today, good people. Welcome back. I have to show you this Baron Coleman clip. Baron Coleman is a master of his craft. He's really good at what he does. And a part of what he does, I don't know if you guys out there are, in fact, fans of Baron Coleman or if you're following the whole, podcast war, TPUSA versus Candace Owens saga that's going on right now. But Baron is one of the leading voices on the Candace side of that podcast war, and he's consistently dropping truth bombs that just cannot be easily explained by the lies offered on the TPUSA side. Baron recently dropped an opening statement on his podcast, and I have to react to it, right? I have to react to it. This one hits different, is what I'm trying to say. Right? Barron has been one of the most careful and consistent voices in this whole debacle, and this opening statement is his best work yet. So let's check out what Mr. Barron had to say in episode 133. Okay, so this is not, it's not yesterday or 2 days ago or something. It was a little bit ago, but it wasn't like months ago, right? This is quite recent, and it's really good. After we react to this video, um then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of our discussion, but let's hear what he has to say.
Opening statements I've given relative to the Charlie Kirk case. So, with your permission. Oh, okay. I have your permission. So this is your opening statement. It's becoming increasingly obvious to nearly everyone who looks carefully at the Charlie Kirk investigation. Something is incredibly off. Even if you don't buy the official narrative, there are a number of things that just don't sit well with normal thinking people. Who literally digs up a crime scene 3 days after a shooting and without a contractor in place yet to pave over it once it's dug up? And for that matter, who paves over a crime scene at all? Especially just 4 days after a high-profile political assassination on a Sunday in Utah. We're told that order came from the FBI and the governor of Utah. Since when do governors and the Federal Bureau of Investigation make beautification decisions on college campuses?
Right? Isn't that the college's job to make the beautification decisions? And a college wouldn't decide by themselves to pave over a crime scene, right? The college would be expecting officials from the government to be there until the crime is until a significant portion of whatever happened right there that day is solved, right? Like a little caution tape, you know. Um, the governor and the FBI are like, yeah, so we're gonna dig this up right now, and then in a couple days on a Sunday, we're gonna have pavers come and we're gonna actually redo and change a little bit of this scene, this menorah um structure for no reason, for no reason. Also, we have every reason not to do so because there was a huge crime that was committed here that we have not solved yet. But, all that aside, let's go ahead and pave this over.
And since when do they demand them so urgently after making them? This is, of course, not the only anomaly in the Charlie Kirk investigation. There are others. For example, 30-06s are not stopped by 3 inches of soft neck tissue. They're just not. I don't care who tells you they are not. You don't have to be a firearms expert to know that. Even some of the most strident supporters of the theory that Tyler Robinson acted alone, those people once plainly accepted this fact at face value. The wound certainly doesn't look, and it did not act like any 30-06 wound in the history of marksmanship. That much is blatantly obvious. But it's not just the covering up of the crime scene and the impossibility of the wound having come from a 30-06.
One of the people that was initially opposed to the 30-06 narrative was actually one of the leading voices and X accounts on TPUSA's side. His name is Gary Gary Melton, from Paramount Tactical. And he has videos that are circulating the internet right now, Gary from Paramount Tactical, where he's like, yeah, it couldn't have been a 30-06. Yeah, nah, it's too powerful. And from that many yards away, there's just no way if it hit his neck that, first of all, there's no way that there's no exit wound, and secondly, if it hits his neck, like the damage is going to be more than a little dot, right? And he's one of the leading voices right now promoting that it was indeed a 30-06. But it's just so ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous that they even went with that instead of trying to figure something else out. But we'll get into that later. Let's hear what he has to say.
While most platforms now censor any display of the moment Charlie Kirk was struck, there are still a number of videos floating around out there. They're on X, they're on Rumble, they're on other platforms. And what they show is striking. At the moment of impact, supposedly by a single round to Charlie's neck, nearly everything on Charlie's body seems to react instantly to something that very clearly is not a single rifle round to the neck. The microphone under Charlie's shirt instantly starts to move from his right collarbone towards the center of his neck. Something under his shirt, originating from the middle of his thorax, rapidly and powerfully rises towards the left side of his neck. It's not loose t-shirt fabric that's rising. It's a structured mass. It's a solid object of some sort. At the exact same time, footage from Charlie's side shows his shirt blow back off his neck several inches as if air is gushing out of it. As does his right shirt sleeve expands as if air is gushing out of it. And while both of those things are happening, the hair on the back of his head, down where his head meets his neck, is blown up and out as if air is gushing past it. I can't positively tell you what caused all of that to happen, air gushing this way and that way. But what I can say is that does not happen with a single rifle round to the neck. It just does not do that. Rifle rounds don't cause those types of movements.
Right, and it's just common sense, right? If the round is traveling this way, why is his shirt from down here rising, you know what I'm saying? And rising before you get the dot on the neck. It's just common sense.
There's also the absence of an ambulance at an event on a college campus that hosted more than 3,000 people. There was the refusal of help from two medical professionals who were on the scene with medical bags, offering their expertise as Charlie Kirk was being loaded into a car.
Yep, there was medical professionals there at the scene offering help, and they were turned away because they had to hurry up and get him in the car to get him to the hospital. Right? They had a plan. They were executing said plan. Didn't have any time to save anybody's life on the way.
There's the fact that Charlie was loaded into a car at all, considering a giant gaping neck wound. And then there are the pictures of Charlie being carried to that car with his head and neck literally dangling and flopping as they carried him. Oh, in that SUV they carried him to? The one that transported a dead body from a crime scene? It was cleaned. It was refurbished. It was sold. The hospital they took him to? No camera footage available. It was confiscated by the FBI. There was that old man, George Zen, the political activist and allegedly interested in illegal images of minors. He jumped up nearly immediately after Charlie went down. You remember him. His pants fell down. He was waving his hands and his hat saying he did it. The very few officers present that day, they responded to him. They secured him. They escorted him out of the way. Of course, that left the rest of the place unattended by officers at a time when anyone involved in the crime could have been exfiltrating. There was that guy who was detained.
Exfiltrating. I love this guy's vocabulary. Yes. Yes, indeed. I just look. The reason why we're reacting to this opening statement is because it's a concise conglomerate or collage, if you will, of anomalies from the day, right? So he's not relying on, he's not talking about what Candace brought. He's not talking about what, anything. He's talking about like what you can see on the footage and the sequence of events that happened on camera and or were revealed through police reports and things like that. Nothing he's saying is theorizing about a grand plan or anything like that. And it's so obvious through just the events of that day alone how likely it is that nefarious activity happened. Okay, that a military operation likely went down that day. Just from how that day played out. It's crazy. Also, that word that he used means to sneak out of a place.
Going hospital to hospital, allegedly armed and allegedly looking for Charlie. He was described on police scanner traffic. His name was given. A description of his car was given. Turns out he's the son of a Navy 06 intel officer who runs a defense contractor and who had previously worked for DynCorp in the Middle East and North Africa. His brother's a Green Beret in the National Guard. Speaking of police scanner traffic, there were policemen on the scanner reporting that people were hanging out of the SUV as it sped to the hospital. One officer said it looked like a struggle was taking place. We don't have any dash cam footage and haven't heard from those officers since that police scanner transmission. There was the jet that took off from a local airport shortly after Charlie went down. It turned off its...
We have so many people that we haven't heard back from since their initial injection into this whole story. So many people, right? There were the 911 calls. There was the people that did the initial interviews for the television, right? They did the initial interviews, like that blonde girl that said he got shot in the chest and it was near his heart and blood started, we saw a lot of blood on his shirt from him getting shot in the chest. And then an hour and a half, 2 hours, a couple hours later, for a different interview on TV, then she's saying, "Oh, he got shot in the neck," right? And how he was just naming all of these people that were connected to the military. How all of those people that did the initial interviews, either them themselves or their immediate family members, were in the military actively now. Insane, right? Insane. This opening statement is still going on for right now. We are almost at the end.
There was the jet that took off from a local airport shortly after Charlie went down. It turned off its transponder, remember? It flew without tracking for a few hours and then returned to Provo? Probably nothing. There was Brian Harple telling how he was directing hospital staff and cutting off Charlie's shirt while perched across Charlie on a hospital stretcher. There was Frank Turek telling one podcast his phone was on FaceTime with his family from the time Charlie Kirk went down during the entire duration of his stay at the hospital and until he got back to his hotel room later that evening. That's some battery, and that's some telephone connection. Of course, he told a different podcaster that he actually had made at least one phone call from the hospital. And we're still unclear how he was able to make a phone call while his phone was on FaceTime with his family.
Yeah, Frank Turek's. Let me make myself big again real quick. His whole story, this was kind of hilarious. Frank Turek told a podcast that he was on FaceTime with his family the moment that Charlie Kirk, that we heard the bang and Charlie Kirk was hit with something. And he was so shocked and nervous and just moving without thinking about it that he said without hanging up, he put that FaceTime call in his back pocket. And then because of how things went for the rest of the time, he didn't notice that he was still on the phone until he was back at the hotel, which means for like Baron just said, for the entire duration of the hospital scene, getting to the hospital, being at the hospital, leaving the hospital, getting into the hotel is when he picked up his phone and his family is still there. Now we are talking hours and hours and hours of time. Nobody's phone battery is that good anymore. Okay? It's just not a thing. Nobody's phone battery is that good anymore. And even if you had it, you had a portable charger in the same back pocket, and it was wireless, and you were charging your phone, and it was still alive, able to keep its juice um, while being on the phone that for that long, your family is not just going to just like wait for however many 6 7 hours. That's just not going to happen. They're not just going to like if they're like, hey, can you hang up? They're going to hang up. They might call you right back. They're just not going to sit and just be like watching or not using their own phones. We use our phones. We are literally all addicted to using our phones. So there's no 7 8 hour period where somebody's just okay that their phone is tied up on this FaceTime call when nothing is happening that they can make real sense of because it's in a back pocket. Also, Frank Turek was in Scrubs. Frank Turek was in Scrubs, so his clothes came off because he was in Scrubs at some point in the story, by his own words, at the hospital. And when he arrived at the hotel, he was in Scrubs. So there's, I think, so there was, it's insane. It's crazy. Let's get back to let's finish this opening statement.
Unfortunately, Frank Turek has not bothered to clear that up. Nor has he cleared up why he didn't notice his phone was on FaceTime when he was changing into Scrubs from his clothes. His clothes, presumably, where his phone was in his pocket. Nor are we clear why the hospital was handing out Scrubs to members of Charlie's security team. Speaking of phone calls.
Right, which is also crazy in and of itself. Speaking of phone calls.
Pastor Jack Hibbs told Fox News that his brother Butch Hibbs called him from the crime scene in the immediate aftermath of Charlie going down. Pastor Jack is quoted in the article describing the chaos in the background as his brother updated him. Pastor Jack must have forgotten about that call because Pastor Jack later told Frank Turek on a podcast that he couldn't remember if it was Frank Turek or Mikey McCoy who first called him. He never mentioned his brother.
Right. And so on that podcast, Frank Turek is telling this, they're going through the same story where Frank Turek's version of events is that he's on FaceTime the whole time with his family, right? He's on FaceTime, he's at the event, and Charlie gets hit, and then he's still on FaceTime, throws his phone in his back pocket, and 8 hours later at the hotel, he picks his phone up and, oh, my family's still here. That was the first version of his story. In this podcast, where he's talking with Hibbs, Jack Hibbs, he's the version of the story is that he calls Jack Hibbs at the hospital. Crazy.
He couldn't remember whether it was Frank or Mikey. Thankfully, Frank Turek was there to remind Pastor Jack that it was in fact Mikey McCoy who first called Pastor Jack. Frank didn't call him later until he called him from the hospital with his phone, maybe still not, on FaceTime with his family. It's all very confusing. There were also those mysterious text messages from the night before Charlie died about clearing the roof above Charlie, which just so happened to make sure there were no audience members who would be positioned where someone on the Losi Center could be seen. There was the officer who was cited in the probable cause affidavit saying he ran straight to the Losi Center roof because he said it looked like a good perch for a sniper. Not sure why, of all the roofs that would have made good perches for snipers, he chose the Losi Center roof, but that's where he went. Not sure why he picked the farthest roof with visibility to Charlie and just happened to be correct. UVU officers are very sharp officers, I suppose. They're the pictures the FBI released of the alleged shooter walking to the scene of the crime, looking quite unlike Tyler Robinson.
You know what else is cool about Barron's approach is he's so careful, right? He's so intentional with his diction, with his wording, with the word choice, right? When you're dealing with investigations that are ongoing like this, you don't want to be hazardly with the way that you word everything, right? You don't want to speak with too much authority on something that you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't want to incite a reaction from your audience that may, in a domino effect, like a very logical domino effect, um, affect the case or affect something that matters in any significant kind of way, right? And Barron is on the money with the way that he approaches his reporting. I just wanted to give him some of his flowers, I guess, because the way that he chooses his words, you can kind of, if you're paying attention, you can kind of see where he'll go to say it one way and then edit it real quick in his head and just keep flowing. It's just pretty cool. I wish I
Shooter
could do that.
walking to the scene of the crime looking quite unlike Tyler Robinson. But I suppose that's subjective. What's not subjective is that he was seen a few minutes earlier limping down the road, supposedly because he had a gun down his jeans, and that prevented his leg from bending. But when he's seen on camera just a few minutes later, both knees are bending just fine as he ascends and descends stairs on campus. No gun appears to be stuffed down his skinny jeans. And these are jeans so tight you can see the clear outline of his telephone in his pocket as he bends his knees to walk the stairs. Within minutes of allegedly pulling off the greatest political assassination in decades, there's footage of what appears to be Tyler Robinson's car hanging out in a shopping center parking lot. According to the arrest affidavit, it was in that parking lot that he punched in the address of a local car wash on Google Maps. Because who doesn't want a clean getaway car? It must have slipped his mind before the big day. He's seen on camera at a Dairy Queen 5 or 6 hours later, holding what looks like a blizzard and a box of chicken tendies. That's, of course, before he takes off for a steakhouse 3 hours.
It's and that Dairy Queen photo is like, bruh. I feel like that Dairy Queen photo saved his life because I have the suspicion that a whole lot of people have that basically if certain things didn't leak to the internet and leak to Candace Owens, Tyler Robinson already would have been sentenced and probably done in, or done in illegally, where somebody else would be the token patsy for doing him in when the order was actually given from some sort of institution, right? That's a sneaking suspicion that I have. I can't prove anything. I don't know. But I definitely have a sneaking suspicion that they wanted to rinse their hands of this well before July 6, 2026. That, I don't know. That's just my suspicion. And I, today was the preliminary hearing, day 1. And I don't know, man. I watched a little bit of it. I'm like, the defense and the prosecution are basically playing for the same squad. And the judge is weird. But whatever, we don't have to. It's a public defender. A public defender works for the court system. The prosecutor works for the court system. The judge obviously works for the court system. All I'm saying is that one lady offered a New York lawyer to represent Tyler, just to be added to the team, and he has better credentials than everybody. And they were like, "Nah, public defender, Utah only." Wow, that's all I'm saying. Barron, you almost done, sir? I know you are.
Hours away. He drives 3 hours south where he's seen eating a ribeye and a potato in Panguitch. He's identified by servers who recognized him and confirmed it was him using his credit card receipt. At this point, he's an hour or so from home. It's after 9 p.m. Charlie's been dead around 7 or 8 hours, but Tyler doesn't go home, at least not according to the search warrants. The search warrants place him back in Orem, Utah, near the place where the gun is found. They say he arrived around 12:30 a.m. and left around 1:15 a.m. He made sure to park his car in front of a Ring doorbell camera for good measure. Did I call his Dodge Challenger a car? I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. That won't happen again. I meant vehicle. And we know he prefers to call it a vehicle because over the course of several hours, he allegedly texted a conversation that amounted to a confession to nearly every single detail of the crime. He started by texting saying he intended to take the secret to his grave. But first, he made sure to leave a handwritten note confession under his keyboard back at the house.
Crazy, right? Insane to try and paint the same person that decided to do the crime and do so, without the intention of turning himself in or anything, like doing it in secret, although it's in front of 3,000 people, just, not letting anybody know that he did it, right? Getting away with it. Was his intention. Left a handwritten note and then created a digital diary entry of the entire crime and sent it over the internet. They say over Discord. Then Discord came out, was like, actually, no, there was nothing like that on our server, in our program, and we would have caught it. Our AI would have caught it if somebody was talking like that. So no, this never happened. And then I don't know. It's all very confusing. It's all very confusing. I'm not here to diagnose who's right and who's wrong, but that was just insane.
That note, by the way, doesn't exist. Tyler told his roommate to get rid of it, and his roommate did, in fact, get rid of it. He burned it. But before burning it, he made sure to take a picture of it. It's noteworthy that a picture can't be tested for pesky things like DNA and fingerprints. They also can't be tested for ink types, pressure points when writing, or anything else that might have indicated who actually wrote the note. Not content with confessing in the letter that was preserved by picture before it was destroyed, Tyler Robinson also texted a series of confessions. He admitted to planning the crime for about a week, using his grandfather's rifle, stashing his grandfather's rifle, the type of scope on his stashed rifle, the rifle being stashed with a towel around it, returning to find his grandfather's rifle, being motivated by Charlie's hate, being late returning home to their shared townhome, engraving memes on the rifle shells, his dad being super MAGA, some Trump one, and more. Oh, and he also texted his intent to go out on his own terms after calling police to a location so he wouldn't get dragged through the courts on television. But he wasn't content with that. No, that wasn't enough confessing for one day. He wasn't content to confess in a handwritten note. He wasn't content to confess in a series of texts to the person he confessed to in the handwritten note. He then took to Discord to record his confession for all of eternity to anyone with a link to the Discord chat. There, Tyler Robinson confessed to being responsible and told his friends goodbye and thanks for the good times. After that, he arranged through family to turn himself in, only to, at that time, assert his Fifth Amendment rights to silence and assistance of counsel.
And not confess to a damn thing. Right? After all of the confession, now obviously the implication is that all of the confessions are fabricated. They don't even sound like the same person. Like when you read the Discord versus reading the digital texting versus reading or versus what's alleged to be on the handwritten note, they don't even sound like they're coming from the same person. Regardless, went and turned himself in without confessing to a crime. What? Right? Crazy.
And we've not heard from him since. These are, believe it or not, the only weird facts surrounding the day Charlie Kirk was taken out. These are just a sampling of them. And there are people, I kid you not, who look at all those weird things and say, yep, Tyler Robinson did it, beyond a reasonable doubt, fry him. And that's weird to me. I don't see how anyone can look at any of that and think it's an open and shut case. I don't see how anyone close to Charlie Kirk can look at all of that and ignore it and demand people accept the Tyler alone narrative. But I want you to consider Tyler Robinson. A lot has been made about Tyler Robinson turning himself in. I want to propose a hypothetical situation and ask what you would do in that situation.
Okay. That actually concludes what I wanted to react to from that greatest opening statement. And his thought experiment is great. You should go watch his show on his channel. Give him the view. Um, I hope I didn't take too much from the brother if this video does indeed blow up. But I have some more thoughts to share with you, good people. I wanted to start with the Baron clip because it highlights the unassailable, inconsistencies as well as clearly abnormal anomalies. That's a little redundant. Clearly anomalous occurrences. Clearly abnormal parts of September 10th. Said plainly, in the words of Candace Owens, nothing from that day makes any sense. Right? And so, with that in our minds, I want to talk about why TPUSA, okay, Charlie's legacy company, caught our attention in a bad way in the first place. And I want to be precise about this because there's a version of this conversation that at times goes a little too far, gets a little sloppy, tries to pinpoint things or predict things too fast. Right? Obviously, I'm not talking about people like Baron, Candace, people that just react to everything that's public, but people that give predictions and say, uh, Charlie's alive, or um, this is exactly how he died, and this is exactly what they used, and this is the thing, and this is correct, and everything else is a theory. This is the facts. People like that. Things get sloppy. Okay, we're not going to do that here. I'm not here to assign motive to TPUSA or to anybody, and I'm not here to make any legal claims. Okay? I'm not here to tell you exactly what happened or what TPUSA did or didn't do in any way that's, you know, aimed at the case itself. What I'm here to do is name what started the whole thing where the public started looking at Turning Point USA and saying, what the actual F are you doing? What are y'all doing? What started that attitude towards TPUSA from the public? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't the Superman neck. That's not what started it. That was obviously huge. But it wasn't a Superman neck, right? When the details of how Charlie died started coming out, 30-06 bullet, you know, that hit his neck and then went down and got lodged in his back or something. And people with any knowledge of ballistics started raising questions about the physics of all of that. Those questions were, of course, legitimate, but that wasn't what started our suspicions toward TPUSA. Also, it wasn't Erica crying with no tears coming out of her eyes, right? Wasn't a dry dab napkin. um, it wasn't the evidence that appeared and then disappeared and then reappeared, and then now there's a mountain of evidence, but nobody's seen it. Nobody's heard any details about what it is. Just just there's the mountain. You got to accept it, right? It wasn't that? It wasn't the evidence. It wasn't the stock image situation that had us looking at TPUSA. right? The Mauser 98 on the and like how Dairy Queen wasn't in the timeline, those things. Um, it wasn't that. Those things matter. They're worth examining. I'm glad that we're examining them as the people that follow this story on the Candace side or whatever. I'm glad we're following these things, but none of them is what put TPUSA specifically into the bad framing. What put them into the bad frame was something much simpler, right? Something that does not require any forensic anomalies to be true. And it's about what friends do. Okay? When the officials broke the news about what happened to Charlie Kirk, the initial story did not sound right to a lot of people. We just went through Baron Coleman breaking that down super greatly, in a super great way. And it wasn't just conspiracy minded people that found the official story odd from the get go, that just were like, okay, we already don't like you, Cash Patel, because of the Epstein debacle. You going on Joe Rogan and, saying, hey, if there was something that, I should tell the public, but there isn't, but if there was something that I should tell the public, you know me, Joe, you know me. And Joe Rogan's like, yeah, we just met. Just met here at the studio. And and he's like, you know me, I'm gonna, I'm gonna be, what I'm saying? Anyway, um, we already don't like you from the Epstein stuff, and now you're saying to the public this initial story about Charlie Kirk and saying, I'll see you in Valhalla, and saying, 33 hours, 33, 33, 33. And a part of that story that you're concocting is that you got the guy is I don't know what I want to say about Cash Patel sometimes. And since I don't have any notes about this, since this was a tangent, I'm just going to get to what friends do. Okay. Because my train of thought went in 6 different directions all at once. And I want to get to the rest of this script. I know we've been here for a little bit. Here we go. When the officials broke the news about what happened to Charlie Kirk, the initial story did not sound right, and not just to conspiracy minded people. People who understood something about how basic things work and who paid attention to the specific details as they were presented. And of course, Candace Owens was one of these people that were initially suspicious. Now, Candace is not a random commentator at this point. Not only has she a documented professional relationship with Turning Point USA and a very, you know, demonstrated friendship, but she had an established track record, okay, a track record of reputation for being extremely thorough and precise in her reporting on any story that she covers. If you did some dirt and Candace Owens starts covering your story, you're scared. Okay? You do not like that scenario because she's very precise. She's very thorough. She's not easily. She's the biggest podcast ever, and nobody can take her to court for defamation because she doesn't tend to lie in her reporting. Okay? Whether or not you agree with her politics, her reporting is thorough. So she was not someone who grabbed every theory that floated by on the internet and put her name on it. Okay? She was someone who earned a specific kind of credibility through a specific kind of work, through a specific period of time. And when Candace looked at the official narrative and decided that the feds were lying, which they were, that story being sold to the public from the feds was a complete falsity. The whole world expected one thing to happen. Okay? Everybody expected what Friends do to happen next, but it didn't. We expected Turning Point USA, her friend's company, her friend's friends, to stand with her against the lies fed to us by the feds. She even said in the first episode that she started covering this story, there are two people in the whole world that can stop me from investigating what happened to my friend because the feds are lying. And those two people are the new head of Turning Point USA and my husband, George. Right? This is, everybody, Candace included, expected Turning Point to stand with Candace because of her documented, established reputation of being a great reporter on stories that she latches onto. And because they were friends. Her and Charlie were friends. Now, like I said, that's what friends do. Also, that's what colleagues do, right? This is what any organization does when it genuinely cares about the people at its center more than the infrastructure built around one of those persons' names. But Turning Point did not do that, obviously. What they did was attack Candace. They called her a conspiracy theorist. They called her an anti Semite. The people who were publicly positioned as Charlie's closest professional circle and his wife turned on the single most prominent independent journalist who was committing herself to questioning the official story of how their founder slash husband died publicly. And why did they do that? Why did they take that position? Not what might that mean, right? Not what might that prove. Just a journalist with standing and credibility and a personal connection to the victim decides to fight for truth in the wake of her friend's passing, and the organization built that built its entire brand around that friend's name attacks her for seeking the truth about his death. That is the first red flag for TPUSA. That is the thing that started us not trusting Erica or TPUSA in general, right? Because she wasn't as they didn't have her talk a lot at that point, right? She only talked a couple times, and she sucks at reading a script, but the script wasn't very complicated or anything like that, and you know, anyway, it wasn't necessarily against Erica at that moment for everybody. It was against Erica for some people. Some people just could sniff it out. It was just like, nah, I can. That's not. That's something's wrong there. Most of us, we might have had a little twinge of that, but just we didn't pay no mind. We were just like, okay, yeah, the feds are lying. Everybody was just like, yo, the feds are lying. And then all of a sudden, it's like TPUSA is working with the feds to push the lie. No matter how nonsensical the lie proves to be, as more and more things come out, right? As more and more things come out proving these lies are in fact lies, TPUSA goes harder and harder to try and explain them away. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, right? And it's not a theory, okay? It's a behavior, a specific, observable behavior that stands in direct contradiction to what anyone who is actually committed to the truth and actually grieving a friend and is the good colleague would do. Okay, it's the opposite. Now, here's the other half of this whole thing. Even if every single detail of the official story is accurate, right? Even if Tyler Robinson did exactly what they say he did in the exact way they say he did it, which would be physically impossible, but even if it were true as a thought experiment, the question of why TPUSA attacked Candace for asking questions rather than joining her in asking them remains entirely unacceptable and unanswered and significant, in my opinion, right? And let's add, and one more thing, Governor. Let's add another piece of context here because I've had this on my mind as well. Okay. Sorry, for the first time, I'm sitting on a pillow, and I have a this neck pillow. Sorry, behind my back because hip support, back support, all the support. I'm old. I'm just kidding. I work hard, so sometimes sitting doing this podcast, I need to sit on a pillow. Anyway, um, here we go. Let's add another piece of context because it makes the question harder to dismiss, right? The question of why TPUSA is attacking Candace for asking questions and seeking the truth. TPUSA raised at least $250 million in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death. 250, a quarter billion dollars. It was like 6 months, I believe, Candace said. That's documented, right? That's public information. That's not just, that's not including what they may have made personally in their own capacities, also off the back of Charlie's death. The fundraising that happened in the wake of this tragedy using Charlie's name, still to this day, they call the podcast The Charlie Kirk Show, and the man's been dead for months. It's a little weird, right? They didn't change the name from something else to The Charlie Kirk Show after he died as like a way to remember him and put his name on something. No, which more so you do with like a building than a podcast show, but whatever. Um, no, it was called that because he was the host. Now he's not the host because he's dead, and they keep the name. They keep calling it the Charlie Kirk Show, and of course they're on the Charlie Kirk Show, representing ideas and ideologies that are completely opposite of what Charlie Kirk believed in. But that's neither here nor there for this episode. The fundraising that happened in the wake of the tragedy, using his name, using his story, and the emotional weight of what happened produced $250 million. Now, I'm not telling you what that means as far as that means they did it, right? I'm not assigning motive to murder or anything like that on anybody. And again, I'm not making any legal arguments. What I'm saying is that when you're asking what an organization why an organization behaved the way they did, the way it did, pardon me, the question of who benefited and how much is a relevant piece of data. It's not a verdict, but it is context, right? The organization that chose to attack Candace Owens rather than stand with her is also the organization that raised $250 million in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death. In real life, Charlie Kirk's death is still a mystery. In real life, even if they convict Tyler Robinson, there are too many unassailable anomalies about the um that day, right? And what followed from the initial behavior of attacking Candace was the beginning of what people have been calling the podcast war, right? Or at least I call it that, and people know exactly what I mean when I say the sort of podcast war between Turning Point USA, the Feds, and Candace Owens, and people who are like on Candace Owens' side. The public back and forth between Candace and various TPUSA aligned voices that has played out across platforms since September 2025 or since October 2025. And I want to say something about the bleed into the actual court proceedings because I think it's understated. The podcast war is not separate from the legal case. The statements made publicly, the interviews that are given, like Brian Harpole's interview, um, Candace Owens' interview on the Sean Ryan podcast, uh, the claims that are laid out, Frank Turek being on various podcasts, right? The claims that are laid out on record across various platforms, these have become part of the public record in ways that affect what people can and can't argue in the proceedings in various like time slots. Whether people want to admit it or not, the conversation that started when TPUSA chose to attack Candace rather than join her has had real ongoing consequences inside the courtroom, inside the heads of those who are inside the courtroom. And here's where I want to close today. Candace often says on her show that the only reason people lie is to cover something up. I'm applying that to the behavior of TPUSA as a whole, to the official narrative and the actors within the federal government that have given the official story and their behavior as a whole, and specifically Kash Patel. Now, the only reason you attack someone who is fighting for truth rather than joining them is if the truth they're fighting for is a threat to something that you don't want threatened, something that you are protecting. That's not a theory about what happened on September 10th, of course. That's an observation about human behavior, which applies everywhere to everyone and has applied throughout every episode of this series. The people who benefit most from the stories that we accept without any examination are always the ones that I encourage, are always the last ones to encourage us to examine the stories. Okay? The ones who benefit most from the stories we don't examine are the ones who never tell us to examine them. If there is any legitimate reason that Turning Point USA had to help cover up the truth that the feds are hiding from us in regards to what happened on September 10th and why, if there was any legitimate reason for Turning Point's behavior in aiding and abetting in the covering up of the truth, it has to be because they are protecting something. And in most people's hearts, there is nothing worth protecting in that way when it comes to somebody like Charlie Kirk being assassinated. Right? Somebody who was good at least arguing political topics with a good amount of research and statistics and facts and opening conversations up to young people that are beyond what's going to be on their next test, right? Opening up the political conversation to the next generation of voters, okay? And sorry, I'm just moving something on my computer here. And you don't have to like his politics to recognize that him being assassinated um is huge, right? That is big news, and it is big sad news, if you will, because it sets a precedent that we don't want to set. All right. All right, but I ain't gonna talk your head off. I ain't gonna talk your head off about it. Y'all already know. It's morals over everything. Please like the video. Okay. When you like the video, you get 1 point in your morality. You get one moral. You go up one moral. You're gonna hear like a Mario sound. It's gonna go ka-ching as soon as you like the video. I promise. I don't promise. Yeah, man. We're just examining the stories that we're being fed by the feds. We're just examining the stories. And I will see you all tomorrow in the next episode. Let me know in the comments what you think. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what you think about Barron's opening statement as well as the whole Turning Point versus Candace saga, you know? You don't have to get in the comments, start arguing about who's right and who's wrong and what happened that day, but you can get in the comments and tell me what you think about the whole fight. You know what I'm saying? You're also free to say whatever you want. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace and love always in all ways.